To bring you some incredibly awesome political talk on Damn Radio.
And that is damn straight. I am Samuel Trapp. This is International Flavor. You are on Damn Radio, coming to you live from Lake Ozark Real Estate of the Art Studio, where you might phone in if you feel the urge, 573-746-8020. You can send me emails that I'll never read at live@damnradio.com, or perhaps at samuelt@internationalflavor.com. And I'd be very happy to discuss anything with you this beautiful Thursday night. It is what it is today. Today is the 23rd. We are a week away from Halloween. That's what's upon us. It's a coming. There's some scary folks out there. That's all I can tell you. They're scary folks. They don't even need to dress up. They're just scary. And I am dealing with some scary folks in my life, even at present. And I think it is unfortunate when people's masks are taken off, and they're even uglier when the mask is off. This is not good. And I shall leave you to ponder what I mean by that, because I just will not go any further into it. JR's got all the TVs up in here, and I'm being distracted, but I don't want to turn them off. And on the far left, there's the Andy Griffith Show showing up on Pluto. And I always liked watching the Andy Griffith Show. It has nothing to do with the show tonight. I wanted to tell you a little bit about events of the day, okay? So first thing this morning, guess what I did? What did I tell you? I told you I was having an interview. There was going to be some interviewage of me on a Russian channel in Russian. And what I thought I would do, because, back in, I don't know, whenever I was in Russia back in, what was it, September? August? I don't remember. It was late August, early September. Coming around between Belarus, hanging out in Moscow. I went to the TV studio and there spoke for an hour. Well, if you know me well enough, you know that I can sometimes just ramble. Whether you want to call it a gift or less than a gift, that's up to you. But I can also ramble in another language. And I felt like after it was done, the interview went very, very well, and I enjoyed it. But I've kind of felt like I should have prepared a little bit more, at least on topics. I didn't know what they had wanted to talk about for an hour. I really didn't know. The last time I had seen the lovely correspondent that was interviewing me, we had been in Kazan at the BRICS conference, and I thought we might go into some of that. And we did. We talked a little bit about it. We talked about Trump. We talked about Zelensky. We talked about some other things. But I kind of felt like I hadn't prepared, and I probably should have done something. And so before the interview this time, what I did was I got... because she had told me she wanted to, quiz me about the Zelensky-Trump, the visit that was last Friday, and some of the aftermath of that, and some of this crap that I talk on here on the show all the time. Anyway, well, what I did was, the interview ended up being about 20 minutes. You know, we had several topics. We went through it. We talked about my article that they're going to publish for me. Hopefully I'll see it sometime in the pretty near future that comes up. She said it'll be coming out next. She wanted to put my video in the proper format, and I'll have it out here. And what I was wanting to do was... take the Russian questions that they asked me, and that I answered in Russian, of course, and translate them into English and give you the exact format of the whole shooting match. And what I thought I would do, because I did prep for a couple of the answers, one of the things that happened yesterday, and that I have talked about, and that they asked me about, and I might have mentioned some last night, but didn't go too far into, was the fact that the Ukraine war, or the war in Ukraine, is now Donald Trump's war. Okay, all of this, it is no longer Joe Biden's war. You still hear him saying, well, if I had been in office, this war would have never taken place. If you had done this, this wouldn't have happened, and blah, blah, blah. But now, in my humble opinion, this is Donald Trump's war. It's no longer Joe Biden's war. It's Donald Trump's, because he has the opportunity to end it by cutting off Ukraine, and he won't do it. And he keeps being given the opportunity. He keeps tiptoeing or dancing up to the line, and then he reverses course and goes back the other direction, which I said something similar on my Russian interview this morning. And so I assume, and for them, it was already evening. So our interview was at 9 o'clock this morning, which meant it was 5 p.m. their time. So by the time I get home after this broadcast, I should be able to find, or maybe it'll come up that before Friday, the article that I wrote will be posted out in Russian, and the interview that I gave will be put out on the Russian sources. But so far, I haven't seen it. You know what I suppose I could do? I could go on the old interstellar internet and see if there's anything out there, because perhaps there is. Maybe she did get something done. Who knows what happened? They have things like interviews, opinions. Wonder where I am. Maybe I was an interview. Nope, not yet. Nothing with the old Samwise, and I am not there. I wonder if I'm on the opinion page. I don't know. Nope. Mikhail Pavlov is there. Vladimir Skachka. Rostislav Ishenko. And Vladimir Skachka is there again. Well, but no Sammy yet. I am not there. But we shall keep an eye out and see when that comes out, because I want to put it out for you. But now it probably won't be until Sunday. In fact, it won't be, because I'm not appearing again until Sunday. That's the way it goes, isn't it? So at any rate, I did want to go into I wanted to find the Medvedev, because Medvedev had a quote, and I wanted to tell you what it was and exactly what he said, because frankly, it's hard not to agree with him. And it's in Russian, so I'll have to translate it on the fly. But here's what he said. Dmitry Medvedev, and he said about Trump and the war. And this truly makes me sad. You know, I don't like to hear this, but it's true. He said, the U.S. is our enemy, and their conversational peace talks, mirotvorets, is now has become the fields of battle with Russia. So the peace talks are now the field of battle with Russia. It is now his conflict, speaking about Trump. That's what Dmitry Medvedev said yesterday. And it's unfortunate. Now, Dmitry Medvedev is kind of like, Medved means bear, just so you know. Oh, and by the way, Polly, if you happen to be listening, the word is, for your listening pleasure, zatknis, means shut up, zatknis. And that is the actual word. Zat, Z-A-T, knis, K-N-I-S, zatknis. And means shut up. Medved, by the way, means bear. And so Medvedev is, Dmitry Bear. That's him. And, or Dmitry of the Bear, depends on how you want to, parse words, which I don't really want to do. Anyway, I'm just rambling because I some of the things that I got into on my show this morning. And I had watched, because I don't sleep ever, and in the middle of the night last night, I was watching Maria Zakharova, and she had some interesting statements of her own that I put out there. One of them I thought was hilarious, and I wanted to share it just because it was so funny. She said, because she is a pretty What is the name of our girl who speaks from the White House press corps? But that's White House. This lady, she speaks from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs side, and and I've told you about her before. She's got these 2.5 hour, 3 hour press conferences that she gives literally 2-3 times a week. And so you can get on there, and she always talks about she points out all of the attacks on civilians. This morning, some of the numbers that she gave, and this is a frightening number. She says that over the course of the war, what the Ukrainians have done in attacking buses, beaches, hospitals, schools, apartment complexes, civilian targets, cars, that over that period, and she always lists, 10, 15 of these that occur each and every day, and nobody puts this stuff out. Now, I'm not saying war isn't war and that the same thing doesn't happen on the Ukrainian side all of the time. That whether it's Russian missiles, I don't believe Russians intentionally attack civilian living homes. I don't believe that happens. I believe they try to avoid it, and they have always talked about it. I believe that accidents do occur, though, and that when a missile is shot down by air defense, those two things collide, and they could fall, and that would kill civilians and stuff like that. I don't think that they are actually targeting. Now, what happens, though, when the Ukrainians are out there actually targeting these type of things. The one that got me the most was the beach in Crimea, when on a Sunday afternoon on a beach where there's nobody there but families sunning themselves, the Ukrainians set off cluster rounds and killed like 130 people, something like that. Not good. And those sorts of things occur. And you see stories like those. Maria Zakharova points them out all the time. Well, one of the things she said, and I have to not give you the whole thing, I'm just telling you a little bit of the basics about it. What she said was that all of you people in the West who are, fighting for democracy. And then she stops and she pauses and she looks in the camera and she goes, what are you talking about? There is no democracy in Ukraine. You forget that they haven't elected a parliament since, whatever time. And they haven't elected their president since 2019. And he was supposed to be gone in May of 2024. And nobody mentions these things. And nobody even talks about it. And this is okay. But in Europe, we're still passing out this illusion, these fake words that it's all about we're backing democracy. And Zelensky gets on TV and actually says, we appreciate people fighting for our democracy. You don't have a democracy. It doesn't exist. You aren't having elections for your parliament, your Duma, I forget what it's called over there, your state house, and you're not having elections for your president. You are arresting everybody that offends you. You are getting rid of churches that are associated with Russia. There are all kinds of these things going. And by the way, I've been distracted, and once again, I want to make sure I mention this in my instant dislike of how this happens. I don't like it. They've blown up boat number 6. I'm going to tell you, I just, in the Venezuelan international waters, because these are drug dealers, yeah, prove it. Prove one, and I will shut up. Prove it. This is not the way you target drug dealers. So you got the freaking Navy. Stop them, board the boat, arrest them, jail them, or turn it into a death penalty to run these. But still, give them the trial. What you're doing is un-American, and I'm against it. Now, I'm against drugs too, but I also think that it's pretty convenient that you just get to blow up a bunch of boats and say, oh, but we're doing the right thing. You're not doing the right thing. And you cannot justify this. You don't right a wrong with another wrong. It's not, that is un-American. It is not what we stand for. And I personally, Trapp, Samuel Edward, what does JR call me? Samuel Edward von Trapp. Am I number 1 or number 2? I can't remember. Samuel Edward von SEVT2. I think I'm SEVT2. I don't know why I'm 2. I should be number 1 because I'm certainly the oldest. My father was Michael, actually Clifford Michael, but he was, and my oldest brother was Clifford Michael, and my father's father was Clifford Michael. So there was 1, 2, and 3. But I'm just plain old ordinary Sam, the first. I have a son named Sam. He's the second. So there you go. I cannot be SEVT2. I can be SEVT1, I suppose. However, anyway, I'm rambling again. Sorry about that. We're going to continue. Let's see. The India and sanctions. Okay, so I saw some news that India and sanctions, that allegedly Rosneft and Lukoil, the Indians, are going to cut off purchases from Rosneft and Lukoil. And I told you last night to keep track of that and really pay attention to that. And this morning in the news, they said that the largest refiner of Indian oil, the biggest company, that they have said, and they have already started trying to move around contracts to stop the purchase of Russian oil from Lukoil and Rosneft. And it so far hasn't happened. Xi Jinping and Trumpster are meeting on what, the 30th, I think, next Thursday, that they're going to meet, and they haven't met since 2019. And the alleged agenda of that is to convince Xi Jinping to stop buying Russian oil and gas too, and force this to take place and stop the war. We already know how to stop the war. If these a-holes would only listen to me, this would be resolved already. But it's not. Same old crap, different day. And but once again, did you see the headline today? Here we go. Let's laugh over this for just a tiniest of bits, okay? What is her name? The highly attractive, in my humble view. Of course, I don't know. Maybe I'm weird, but I think she's pretty. Let's see. What is her name, though? I can't remember. There it is. I found it. Good. At least I got to read it. I've always been sort of bad with names, and I really apologize for that. But here you go, from the White House itself. So where were we yesterday? Oh, we're not going to go to Budapest. There is no Budapest. That is put off. It's canceled. We're not doing it. Now, the Putin-Trump summit is not off the table, said the White House. A summit between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin is not completely off the table, said the White House press secretary, the highly attractive Carolyn Leavitt, in a press briefing on Thursday. So just today. Yesterday, off the table. Today, back on the table. These people... changed underwear. The underwear said, the tag in the back said back on. And then when they take the underwear off, it'll be back off. That's how it works. Trump called off a planned summit with Putin in Budapest a day earlier, after it was announced last week that there would be one, and it was canceled, put back on, canceled, put back on, and now it was canceled, and now it's not completely off the table, it's just falling. Okay, so we don't know what the hell's going on. Leavitt was asked to comment on the decision and the recent U.S. sanctions on major Russian oil companies. A meeting between these two leaders is not completely off the table, she said. I think the president and the entire administration hopes that one day that can happen again, she said. Trump has not seen enough interest in enough action from Russia. So why aren't we sanctioning Ukraine too, for God's sake? Force them to the table. They're not at the table. Doesn't it take two to tango? Curiouser and curiouser, as I read once in a book. Moscow has maintained that it remains fully committed to a diplomatic solution, not just a ceasefire, a solution to the Ukraine conflict, provided the root causes are addressed. But the lovely and talented Carolyn Levitt also addressed sanctions on Russia that were unveiled by the U.S. Treasury Department Wednesday. The president has always maintained that he would implement sanctions on Russia when he felt it was appropriate and necessary. And yesterday was that day, she said. Putin, speaking to the press also on Thursday, noted that the unfriendly move causes harm to Russian and U.S. relations, which he said have just begun to recover. Despite this, the sanctions will not significantly impact the Russian economy, he said. The restrictions are yet another attempt by the U.S. to strong-arm Russia, he said, and stressed that no self-respecting country makes decisions under pressure. The president confirmed, President Putin that is, that the summit with Trump is postponed. What can I say? Dialogue is always better than confrontations, disputes, or even more so, war, said Putin, adding that Russia has always supported and continues to support diplomacy. Let's talk about what an analyst said about these sanctions. I gave you a little bit yesterday, but now we're going to take somebody who's an economist and went on into this a little bit further. It's a little bit longer piece, but I think we should talk about it. Washington's 9-month pause on new restrictions against Russia has come to an end as Donald Trump imposed his first sanctions of his second term, targeting two of Russia's biggest oil companies, Rosneft and Lukoil, along with their subsidiaries. The move, presented by the White House as a push to encourage Moscow to agree to a ceasefire, comes alongside postponement of the anticipated summit between Trump and Putin in Budapest. While the administration insists the meeting is merely delayed, not canceled, the twin decisions have reignited debate in Moscow about Trump's real intentions. I'm not sure he knows what his real intentions are. Hello, how's the family? This guy will change his underwear tomorrow, and, it'll be all about how much we don't like Zelensky. Then we'll go back to hating Putin again. Then we won't like Zelensky. I don't know. At least, how does that statement go? You don't like the weather in North Texas? Stick around 5 minutes. It'll change. You don't like Trump's underwear? Wait a minute. He'll change them any minute now. And about who truly sets the tone for U.S. policy toward Russia. Nobody sets the tone for U.S. policy toward Russia. There is no policy. All it is throw a dart at a dartboard and hope you hit something reasonable, And it doesn't matter if you do or don't, because it's just, one's red, one's black, one's bullseye, one's outer ring. That's where it's going to be. You never know what the hell's going to be happening. Below is a roundup of reactions from leading Russian experts and commentators on this debacle. Ivan Timofeyev, who's a program director at the Valdai Club. Remember when Putin gave a 3.5-hour speech at the Valdai Club several weeks ago? Two of Russia's largest energy companies and their subsidiaries have just been hit with blocking financial sanctions. The energy sector is already under heavy pressure, not the least of which is because of extensive export control. Well, let's see. Maybe someone has something exciting to tell us. Let us find out and begin at the beginning. Yes, kind sir, how may I help you?
So, hey, Trapper, what do you think about John Brennan?
I keep trying to think, but nothing happens.
Okay, maybe I should rephrase the question. John Brennan is was the former CIA director under Barry Soetoro, Bathhouse Barry, like JR.
Barry Soetoro. Keep going.
So this guy's a devout Muslim. He's whiter than the driven snow.
And why is this bad?
Well, because he's a traitor.
Wait. Are you saying that all Muslims are traitors?
No, not necessarily.
Well,
but I would lean heavily in that direction, just given the history of their
I will tell you that I think that is a mistake. Are you aware that I have been married to a Muslim?
No, I'm not. Pray tell.
What do you know about Muslims? In all seriousness.
Well, the only thing I know about Muslims there's a thing called Sharia law. That's all I know.
Okay. Well, that I will tell you is a fear tactic. Now, I'm not telling you there aren't extreme wings of Muslimism, just like there are of many other organizations, religions, however you want to put it. There are, I don't want this to sound really bad, but the quickest example I can think of is there are murderous arms of a highly religious Israel organizations. Okay.
Oh, I totally agree.
And so to lump all Israelis or all Jewish people into that would be a huge mistake. To lump all Muslims into Sharia law is an equally large mistake. And there are bad people everywhere. When Charlie Kirk got killed, they tried to paint the murdering a-hole who did it as a Mormon, and I believe he did grow up that way. If he, is the guy that murdered him, I don't get into any of that stuff, but I'm saying they tried to paint it that way, as they did with another couple of actions that come up. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist. I'm not even saying that they aren't right. I don't know. And so what I am saying is I reserve judgment until I personally know. And when somebody wants to extrapolate some bad act by a bad person in a religion to the entire religious realm of that religion, I am against that. And so that's the only caution I will give you. I don't know much about John Brennan or what he has done. Maybe he's a Sharia law god, and I don't know. Maybe it's.
I don't know. I don't know either, Sam. But see, these are the conversations that we need to have as right-thinking, open-minded, liberal-minded, and I don't mean leftist. I mean open-minded liberalism. We need to engage in these conversations and get to the bottom of this. And I think weed out the ne'er-do-wells and the bad ones that are trying to.
Well, there are bad ones, but let me tell you an opposite story. You are aware, I think, that I lived in Qatar for a year. Yes.
Yeah, I remember you talking about.
Well, one of the things I lived, and I told this story to somebody else tonight, and so it's just fresh on my mind, and I forgot about this. It's hilarious. When I lived over there, I lived in a villa with 7 European men, and one there was an American girl in there, and there was the wife of one of the guy from Amsterdam. His wife was there as well. So there were like 8 or 9 of us that lived in this huge villa, 3 floors, several wings, right on the ocean. It was really cool, and all fairly well to do, except me, of course, but the rest of them were fairly well off and had pretty cool jobs. All of us were there building things. Well, one of my buddies, my friend for a year who lived there with me, was an engineer, a really cool guy from South Africa named Warren. And Warren was a very good friend of mine. And we would go out and, the culture is so completely different over there. You work 2 parts of the day. You have a quick morning because the afternoon it's too hot to work in, and then you work again later in the evening for several hours. And so, especially in the hot months, it's all split up. And the story I told to people was about Ramadan. And people don't understand this. It's a religious celebration around the whole country. Well, it is rude to not at least pay attention to the highly religious nation in which you are living. And so most Europeans that live there, although most are Christian or most are, whatever, agnostic or whatever, they still tried to follow and not, offend the host nation. And so the rule during Ramadan, it's not a rule, is that you don't eat from sunrise to sunset. You fast during the day. But at night, when the sun goes down, there's something called iftar. And iftar, anywhere you go in the city of Doha, anywhere you go, the food is free. And they have a banquet, and you go to these restaurants, and it is fantastic. And they are extremely kind people. And during Ramadan, they are extremely, they're worshiping, right? And they have their worships that they do during the day, but they limit how much work people can do. They limit where they are, but it's not anything horrifying, right? And so I was extremely glad to have run into this because I didn't know much about the Muslim religion. I had heard stuff, and I was pretty well read, and I knew things, but I never experienced it firsthand. Well, this is why a lot of people around the rest of the world think that we Americans are just ignorant. Because we don't know these things. We just hear a tiny little bit about it, and everybody says, "Oh, gee, they wear black robes." Well, the reason I told you about my buddy Warren, and the reason I told you about the kind people, because Warren was one hilarious dude, and he and I had so much fun. Just running around, buying pizza. He'd always go, in the way he spoke, he'd go, Sam, we need to get we would have just gone to dinner. We went somewhere and had curry somewhere, some Indian food, fantastic curry that they had all over the city, or we'd go buy something and have dinner. And on the way home, he'd go, Sam, you know what we need? I'd say, what do we need? He'd go, we need a Whopper. We need Whopper. And he would always go to Burger King and we would get Whoppers. Well, the only reason, these are stupid stories, but I'm getting to a point. And the point, and several times over the course of the year that I lived there and he and I were running around together, we would go out. And the women are all in black. The men, the Qatari women, and they have the hijab and they have the robes that they're wearing, and they're all in black, limousines and black Escalades and highly expensive cars. And several times during the year, Warren would go up. These people would be parked like at a gas station or somewhere like that, and he would go up and knock on the window, and I was like, "What are you doing? Why are you harassing the Qataris?" He said, "Sam, watch. This is how it goes." And I never did this myself, just so you know, but I did laugh my ass off with Warren about it later, and he would knock on the door, and I'd say, or knock on the door or the window of the car, and the Qatari woman who would be riding in the back, she has a driver and she has all that stuff. There's so much money over there. They all got tons of money. And especially during iftar, or during Ramadan, he would knock on the windows, and they would roll down the window, and he would ask them for money. Now, Warren made extremely good money. Everybody over there was making reasonably good money. I mean, we were Westerners in an Arabic country. You made some pretty good money. And he would knock on the window and ask for money. I said, Warren, why are you doing that? He goes, because if you ask them for money, they have to give it to you. I said, what? He goes, yes, it's part of their religious code and their religion. He goes, I was like, you're not telling me you just go knock on the window and people give you money. And I watched him do it, and I swear to God, this guy came back with 4 $100 bills that somebody just passed out the window to him. Now, you could say they're just fabulously wealthy people and they do all this stuff. Warren was taking advantage, obviously, and I thought that guy, we had a lot of fun. He was a very good guy, highly professional engineer, and did some stuff, but he knew how to have fun and do some other stuff. And the only reason I tell you that whole story is because there is a certain amount of, and so when you say something about, oh, gee, he's Muslim, you know that, and nothing else that you said, and it's not offensive to me. I just want you to take a different perspective. I very much apologize for jumping back on you with that, and I hope you don't take it as anything offensive, because I don't mean it that way. But a lot of times you don't understand the perspective of where they're coming. And here in America, I don't want to say we're ignorant, but a lot of times we're ignorant, and the only reason I'm not is because at least on that topic, is because I have experienced it. Does that make sense?
Of course it does, Sam. And I'm going to be the first one to confess right now, I am ignorant. I don't know that, but I have an equally interesting story. I used to be in the trucking business. We hauled gasoline, diesel fuel, jet fuel, rocket fuel, et cetera, so on. A very, very highly volatile commodity that we transported from A to B. And there's a gentleman, his name's Clyde. I don't remember his last name. He's a black guy, just a regular old American black guy, Clyde. And he and I got along so well together. And he worked in Doha. And he would tell me stories about just making so much money over there and never feeling in fear of his life. He was never.
That was an extremely safe place.
Yeah. And he was a Marine. I think, I don't remember the Marine detachment he was with. But so this guy comes back over here on DD-21 or whatever.
214.
214 discharges. Came back over here, highly qualified applicant and driver, and we hired him, and I thought he was just phenomenal, honest, nice, wonderful guy. And he shared deep stories with me. I mean, deep, what I believe are true stories. And just like what you said in Doha, it was just like a paradise. And so he comes and making tons of money, and then he comes back over here and he works for a company. I'm not going to divulge the name because I don't think that'd be fair, but works for the company that I work for, making 1/10 of what he made while he was working over there as a Marine supply sergeant. Mm-hmm. And the reason I say this is I'm not against Muslims. I'm not against Israelis. I'm not against Buddhists or Hindus or any other thing like that. What I am against is them, they, or whomever that whatever it might come from, is coming over here and trying to insurrect or redirect our representative constitutional republic. And that's why I call out that guy, that traitor.
Yeah, well, I haven't read his whole story, and I don't know it, and so I couldn't speak intelligently on it.
That's fine. I'm telling you this right now. I am probably one of the most racist or misogynistic or fascist or whatever those leftists want to try to couch an old white guy in, an old white Christian in. I believe that we should all get along and not effing fight. And there are factions out there amongst us, man. And it's not the Muslims so much. They've just been ginned up, and it's not the it's not the Hindus, it's not the African Americans, it's not the white rednecks. There's a class of people out there that have learned how to manipulate people through mind control and propaganda to create consistent dissent. It's called Cloward and Piven. If you haven't heard of it, look it up.
I have not, and I shall.
Oh, do it. And it's designed to destroy the decent infrastructure of getting along and create social turmoil so that supposedly when that turmoil and civil war hits, the Hegelian dialectic, problem, reaction, solution, they can swoop in and offer us some sort of solution that's going to save us, this utopian, central bank, CBDCs.
Good luck with that. That ain't going to work.
And then one world religion. And then the other thing, I love talking to you because you're so smart and you're so experienced. And then the other thing I'm going to leave you with is Project Bluebeam. Have you heard about the Atlas, the 3I Atlas thing?
Yeah, you told me that.
Yeah. Look into that too. And then on the heels of that is going to come a thing called Project Bluebeam. And it's going to be these mind-controlling holographic images that are going to come down and try to capture the mind of, I don't know, at least 20, maybe 40% of the uninformed, human population to gin them up and turn them into bloodthirsty vampires and killers, bro. It's a true thing. It's out there. I know it sounds crazy, and I know I might be a little bit out there on the fringe, but I've looked into this. I've deep dived into this, and bro, it's a thing. It is a thing that's going on. And Russia, they're not our enemies, man. They're our friends. And Ukraine,
nope. And they're
tools.
Trying. And Ukraine is nothing but a tool, and it's depressing what they're doing to those people. What we are doing to those people, we America and the deep state a-holes in the EU are doing to that country.
It's a shame, brother. It's a shame. So I'm
shame.
so glad. I don't know how you wound up on this radio station. I listened to you years and years ago.
I paid JR.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, I remember listening to you on KRMS years ago on Saturday afternoons. You
True.
were the Trapp.
True. That's right.
And I knew
my show was called Question Everything because I always question stuff.
And did they kick you off, or did you leave?
No. I ran my contract length, and I just didn't renew. It was I enjoyed it, and then I sponsored the trip to Mexico quite a few times when they did that, and they let me speak down there, and I have no problem with KRMS at all. I enjoyed I enjoyed my time there, and. And I enjoy the people, and I knew them. And, do I always agree with them? No. But do I always agree with anybody? Nope, not usually.
Well, you're a treasure, brother. And JR has done a great thing by capturing you on this airwaves. And I feel lucky. I really feel lucky to get to listen to your insight and your experience. And I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I'm telling you, I choose wisely what I engage in and listen to.
Well, I'm glad you do. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I'm just telling you right now that you've got something special about you. I don't quite know exactly.
I'm still trying to figure that out. One day I will do something special.
Do you remember the movie The Jerk with Navin Johnson?
I love that movie. I'm somebody. I'm somebody.
You got a special purpose, Navin.
That's right. You got a special purpose. That's right. Remember, he was somebody because his name was in the phone book. Navin R. Johnson. He's trying to shoot the cans. He hates these cans. How about this one? I'm picking out a thermos for you.
Dear Lord.
I am picking out a thermos. I was born a poor black child.
Right. Dude, so see, that's the kind of connection. And then JR has the connection with Smokey and the Bandit. Those are the simple little connections that convince me.
When I get home, I'm going to punch your mama in the mouth. There is no way you came from my loins.
Right. Okay. Man, it's so much fun talking to you. I have a great night. I look forward to every minute of conversation we get to share, brother. Just God bless you. I know you're not into that, but just be a blessed soul and continue to do what you're doing, because you're adding value to the
value added stream. I'm a value added. Good thing there's no VAT tax here, because JR'd be losing his ass because I'm adding some value.
You'd be effed. All right, brother. I'll let you go. Good night, Sam.
Thanks for calling.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And there he goes. That reminded me of something that I wished to opine upon. I listened today to the show of Polly, Eye of the Beholder, comes in on Fridays, and I sometimes get a chance to listen to it. I try to if I can. And there was a discussion about the old Ikester and some of the things that and I listened to some of the commentary, and it is definitely a different perspective. And I did a show about Ike and what happened to him when he pleaded guilty to this nonsensical nonsense of taking down the camera. And, I did somewhat of a dive into the legality of it all and some of the things that should come up. I was unaware until listening to Polly's show that there were even more cameras put up. I agree with him for some of the idiocy that is going on in the county. I hate to say her name wrong, but I've always known her as Rochelle, different last name, but I can't remember what it is now, so I don't want to say it. But prosecutor in the county, and I think what she did is a dastardly deed, and I'm disgusted by what she did. I don't like it, and I think she should be called out upon it. And I think also there, ethical concerns never hit those sorts of people. But I think it's an ethical concern to be a witness in a case and then be also the person who begs someone to prosecute someone. I think it's just wrong. And I didn't like it then. I don't like it now. And somebody would have to convince me that I am incorrect, and good luck with that. To say that what she did was just wrong, and I cannot stand up for that kind of thing. I also think that Ike being targeted is the biggest lump of dog excrement on the planet. It is not right. And although I understand that he should maybe stand up for the people of Camden County, I believe he did. I also believe that he still has the opportunity to do so, and I hope he does. And I believe, and I went through it on the one time after he pleaded guilty, and I think I did one before he pleaded guilty severally. I remember talking to him about maybe we should be out there broadcasting this all the time. And I agree that it does kind of shut people up. But remember, it is his choice. And I'm not saying that Polly can't have his opinions. Those are his opinions. I wouldn't change them. I understand them, and I get it. And I get what he's saying, and I listen to it. And, part of me is supportive of that kind of thing, and I get it. And I can certainly understand that point of view. He backs it up. However, I also think that Ike backed up his. That until you're the one going through it and you understand how the system is stacked and what they're doing to you and how they're destroying and what point you are in your life and the various things that are going on in different areas that affect you, your family, and what, the frightening nature of it all. And, there but for the grace of God go I, that kind of thing. And, you can always, it's easy to look at anything. I mean, pick it with hindsight. I do it every night. You go back and you look and you judge and you say something. I try hard not to judge, and I don't judge Ike for what he did. I think that he could have gone either way, but it's a risk, and it's always a risk. And whose risk was it? It wasn't the counties. It was Ike's. And these people are screwing with him. Now, did I think that he would have had a strong likelihood of winning those and would probably have won on appeal and would probably have gotten more out of it had he fighted? Did I say fighted? Oh, my God, I'm done. I quit. All right, I've rehired myself. I'm going to do it again, but I apologize for that. And, who's to say that if he fought, he would have won? And for a perspective on this, I fought the corrupt Missouri bar for how long? How long, friends and neighbors? 10 years. And I am right. They are wrong. But I didn't win. Who's still the guy without his law license? Samuel Edward Von Trapp. Second or first, I don't remember. JR knows. And me, in other words, I because they're corrupt a-holes, and they have a system that is not constitutional by any stretch. They have not been granted authority by the Supreme Court to do what they did. They have not been granted any authority by the governor, by the executive branch. So they have no judicial, no executive, and no statutory authority in the Missouri bar at all for the arm that they are trying to replace. And the U.S. Supreme Court of the Missouri had zero rule that applies to it. And however, that doesn't mean they aren't going to use it to stick it up the tailpipe of Samuel Trapp. And it's just not right what they did. But people like the Rochelles of the world, they'll get away with it. But who's to say that Ike would have? Okay, now, did I think he would have been in the right to do so? Absolutely. Would it be worth the risk? Maybe so. But it's not my choice. It's not Paulie's. And I very much enjoyed the perspective of Paulie on that show. And I think there's a lot proper to be said there. But not your choice, the choice. And by the way, paying a freaking lawyer to do that forever and ever and have the risk of losing and then losing and having to appeal and the constant worry and borrowing money or have people raise money for you. The argument that the county should have paid, yeah, I could see that argument, but the Rochelles of the world would fight that too. And then he would, maybe they'll charge him with something for that crap. And so there, until you're saddled with someone else's burden, it is easy to say, this is what you should have done, or this is what, we paid you to do, or whatever. Do I think Ike was right and justified in taking down that idiotic camera? I do. Do I think he was justified in pleading to a misdemeanor to forego the pleasure of having to fight off and have a debacle for himself and his family and go through the destruction of that process? I honor his choice, and the choice is his. And so I don't have anything negative to say. In fact, I have a lot of support for what Paulie said. He backed it up, like I said. So I honor everybody else's opinion. I get that. I honor Ike's choice and Ike's opinion, and I honor what Ike is doing. There were a couple of things that I can't speak to. I don't know whether Ike is, backslapping somewhere. I don't know. I don't see Ike that way. And I know Ike, it's not like we're best of buddies or anything, but I've known Ike for a while. And I'm, we're certainly on a first name basis, and I have no problem chatting with him and no problem believing in him. And I don't condemn the choice he had to make. I think it's unfortunate that the county did what they did. If there really are, and I didn't know this, and I assume it's true, that they have 5 more cameras, I still want somebody, and maybe many of us, to file a class action of the type that is filed currently in Richmond in the Eastern District of Virginia, and do something similar to what they do with these and then it's also Flock there, but they didn't sue Flock. They sued the police chief and they sued on the basis of an illegal search and seizure. And we should somebody should do something similar here. Maybe in 1 or 2 places. Maybe it would be joined in the same case in Richmond. Maybe they would combine the cases. That's possible. And I forget what they call it, the inter jurisdictional court or something like that, where in a federal court, if you file something and it's very similar to something in another jurisdiction, they put the two together. And I don't remember what the name of it, but I want to say interjurisdictional court, or the court of interstate jurisdiction or something like that. I can't remember what it's called, but it's on the federal level. But I think that if there are now 5 or 6 cameras and they are tracking us, or they have the ability to track us, and they are doing the same thing here that the Flock system is doing there, you could almost copy the petition and go against the sheriff here for refusing to take them down. And I think somebody should. Hell, I'll draft it for you. I've done it. Somebody else could file it. Hell, if I said it was myself, because they're tracking me now, I could file it myself pro se and just say I'm going to do it as a class action for everybody else that is in the state of Missouri and is going through this because of what they are doing. It's BS. I don't like it either. I am against these cameras, and I think somebody ought to do it. And all you need is oh, there it is again. Hegseth says 2 narco-terrorists killed in a boat strike in the Pacific. BS, friends and neighbors. Well, you show me where the drugs are. Show me some residue. Show me something. Alleged drug boat is all they can call it. It's an alleged drug boat. And we're just executing people willy-nilly because we say they are drug runners. Anyway, I'm sorry, JR, your TV's distracting me. I got to turn these damn things off. But you tell me not to turn them off because sometimes it causes issues. So anyway, I'll try to quit looking at them and go back to what I said. But I think that the Ikes of the world are really the good guys, no matter how you slice it. Anyway, and that if he's out backslapping his Paulie called it, and by the way, I like Paulie's show is a good show, and I think his opinion is fantastic too, and I honor it. I honor them both, and I hope they continue to have a decent dialogue between each other without any sort of bad blood, because it doesn't. You can have your opinion and you can speak it here on this station, and I believe it's a good spot to do it. And I believe that I'm not sure what I would have done were I Ike, but I honor what he had to do, and I honor the fact that he was put in a position that nobody would like to be put in, and there could be people that are pissed off about it. Well, I'm sure there are, because I heard about it. And but I'm not pissed off. I understand it. And I'm pissed off more at the camera BS than I ever would be at Ike Skelton. So I believe that's all the further I will go into that. But my own personal little diatribe on that. But I did mean to speak on that, and I nearly forgot to do so. And I wanted to go into a little bit more of the world events. So one of the things, did I finish the story I was reading? I don't think I did, because I was reading about where'd it go? Oh yes, I was talking about Mr. Timofeyev from the Valdai Club on the two people meeting on Trump hitting Moscow about these sanctions, and I think that what Putin said today in response to these sanctions is the same thing. Regardless of what you're doing on the sanctions, it will not change what we are doing to finalize our special military operation in Ukraine, and we've been very steadfast and steady with what we're going to say. And the part where he said, the any self-respecting country wouldn't allow itself to be forced, especially if you're another nuclear power. I mean, it's nonsense. Do I think that Trump's going to be successful in forcing Xi Jinping to do anything? It'd be nice. Well, I suppose if you go from the point of view that the entire world runs on money, whether it's the dollar or on anything else, what Donald Trump is doing, and I just saw it, The Hill is predicting, Donald Trump says he will have a deal on everything. So, my assumption is that the tail twister is going to be, you quit buying oil from Russia, buy it from us instead, and we'll get rid of all these tariffs on you. I don't think it's going to work. Russia and China are very, very close and getting closer. And I think what these sanctions and I think what these back and forths and turnarounds of Trump and changes of direction in Trump, that's only going to make it further. And remember, this has nothing to do with Trump. What it has to do with is the indecision, the instability, if you will, and that's a hard word, but it's exactly that. The instability of America. We are unstable. And why are we unstable? Because every 4 years it changes. And I told you before, I'll tell you again. China has 50-year plans, 30-year plans. They have long-term plans that go past changes in the parliament, changes in, they have these long plans. Wouldn't it be nice? And I talked about this when we were talking about finances several months ago, a couple months ago. I don't know how long ago, actually, but it was after my trip to Russia, so it really couldn't have been that long. That if we had some sort of government planning office, something else that was infrastructure bound of something, and allegedly these are your professional bureaucrats, but they're all crooks, and I have no faith in any of that. That is not planning. That's politics. And if every president can come in and have his 225 or whatever brand new executive orders on the desk, and that he can sign with a flourish and hold them all up and say, well, here's the new one. You can't do this. We're going to take the Keystone pipeline and dismantle it. Donald Trump, look what we did to you. You said it was good, but we don't like it because I'm Joe Biden, and I think that thing needs to go. So what if it's $10 billion? What's $10 billion among friends? No problem. Anyway, I think that sanctions are in that category. and that long term, sanctions aren't the answer. So, as I was saying, Ivan Timofeyev, this is good before the caller even, Ivan Timofeyev, who's the program director at the Valdai Club, said the energy sector was already under pressure, not the least of which is because of extensive export controls. In practical terms, sanctioning two more industry giants doesn't change a whole lot. What matters is the political message. Washington had held off on new sanctions since Trump returned to the White House, even as the EU and the UK pressed ahead with more. Now they've got the 19th packet of sanctions. We always get to call them packets. The return to sanctions is a very negative sign. It suggests that hopes for a political settlement in Ukraine are fading. Officially, the U.S. presents these measures as leverage for a ceasefire, but Moscow doesn't make decisions under pressure. Russia's position has long been clear. A ceasefire won't solve anything. It will only deepen the crisis. The new sanctions mark a new phase. This means the conflict will continue, with both sides seeking stronger negotiating positions. The Western hawks, enter Lindsey Graham, have managed to push Washington their way, but Ukraine will continue to pay the price. So that was Ivan Timofeyev, the program director of Valdai. Here's another one. Konstantin Kasachov, Deputy Speaker of the Federation Council. Washington's decision to sanction Rosneft and Lukoil fits perfectly into Trump's familiar logic. Raise the stakes, turn up the pressure, go into negotiations from what he sees as a position of strength. But in this case, I believe the outcome will be exactly the opposite. Agreed. New sanctions will not bring success at the negotiating table. They will only bring Trump closer to the very approach he used to criticize Joe Biden. Those who convinced him that more sanctions, more missiles, longer ranges will make Russia more compliant are, in fact, undermining him. Far from strengthening Trump's hand, they are sharply limiting his role as a potential mediator and peacemaker. Agreed. And that is precisely what the alliance of Democrats and Euro-globalists want, because Trump is a much greater obstacle to them than he is to the conflict in Ukraine itself. Anyone who truly understands the realities and origins of the conflict in Ukraine, as well as Russia's interests therein, which have nothing to do with imperial conquest and everything to do with removing existential threats, will realize that sanctions and missiles are gasoline poured onto a fire. They will not bring peace, but more casualties, and they will only deepen this crisis. Given Russia's history and capability, it is, I'm adding the word, extremely naive to believe the country would make a forced concession that could later turn into a fatal long-term risk. The expectation that the U.S. president will now approach talks with Russia holding stronger cards is a major miscalculation. In reality, his position is weaker, not stronger. Instead of acting as an arbiter, Trump is moving in step with globalist forces that benefit from prolonging the conflict, becoming hostage both to those forces and to his own sanctions, which are always harder to lift than to impose. Of course, Washington may hope to later portray any peace, even one achieved on terms acceptable to Russia, as the result of sanctions and tough measures. But by raising the stakes and misreading the driving forces of the war, Trump risks losing control of the situation altogether, much to the delight of his domestic and foreign opponents, who will happily brand him once again as impulsive Donald, acting blindly in someone else's interests. And I agree with that guy. That is Konstantin Kosachev, and I think it's Chov, might be Chev. Konstantin Kosachev is what I think it is. And that was very well put. And here, Dmitry Novikov, associate professor of the Higher School of Economics. America's latest zigzag can be explained by two simple factors. First, Washington still believes that contact with the U.S. is something Russia values for its own sake. Canceling a meeting or limiting access to the American president is meant to make Moscow think twice. But these contacts are purely functional for Russia, not symbolic. I think Trump did this. I think this was planned. And I think it was planned because, remember, I'm 90% certain that Putin called him the day before the Zelensky visit. And Trump was immediately very, very positive. And over the next 3 or 4 days after the horrible meeting with the old Z-Man and everybody else, Trump reversed course. And if he really thinks, and if this Dmitry Novikov is right, he thinks that he's more important than he is to Putin. And you know what? That also makes a decent point. Anyway, his analysis continues. Second, Americans think there is no rush. The goal is to soften Moscow's demands before the summit, to avoid another Anchorage-style showdown and show progress. But pressure, even limited, is still pressure, and Moscow doesn't make concessions under pressure. Notice he said the exact same thing. And they don't. They never have. They never will. If you think they will, you don't know Russians at all. It's like you don't know traps at all. If you think you're going to force me to do something because, you told me so, well, you better think again that it's not how it works. Or you're going to pressure me. You put pressure on me, I pressure back. That's it. Anyway, there's no detente yet for the simple reason that detente hasn't begun. Both sides are still maneuvering. All right, here's another one. A guy named Dimitri Simes, TV host and professor. The ghost of Joe Biden is still haunting the Oval Office. Trump keeps insisting the Ukraine war isn't his, that it wouldn't have happened under him. True, the war began under Biden, but during Trump's first term, the U.S. expanded sanctions, started supplying Ukraine with lethal weapons, and refused to discuss security guarantees for Russia. Still, Moscow took Trump seriously when he said he wanted normalization and a broader solution to the crisis. Yet he has now postponed Budapest, citing a vague feeling and imposing sanctions that were drafted under Biden but never enacted. Trump has effectively continued Biden's policy. That's a shame in itself, people. While pleasing the very people who once branded him a Kremlin agent. In Russia, analysts see Trump's move as yet another zigzag, a sign that, despite his rhetoric, he remains constrained by the same forces that shaped his predecessor's foreign policy. Public opinion is hardening around one conclusion. Trump and Biden were cut from the same cloth, and Moscow expects Putin to stand firm against them both. That's pretty harsh, isn't it, people? That was Dmitry Simes. Here's another one. Valentin Bogdanov, who's a bureau chief in New York. The sanctions against Lukoil and Rosneft are the first anti-Russian strict restrictions of Trump's second term. The key point isn't the sanctions themselves, but the vulnerability Trump reveals in writing, not just with words. By signing off on sanctions, he's admitting that Washington has no real leverage over India or China, and that his own opponents still have leverage over him. After his call with Putin, the hawks struck back, and Trump took the hit. His disclaimer that the sanctions might not last long only confirms his own uncertainty. Unable to fight the globalist establishment alone, Trump has turned his fire on media allies, attacking the Wall Street Journal for reporting on long-range missiles for Ukraine. Yet he confirmed their existence himself, as if Ukraine could use them without NATO guidance. Trump also said he wouldn't send Tomahawks to Kiev, arguing that only U.S. troops could operate them, a sign that he's still leaving himself an exit route. I believe I said that yesterday. He's even voiced support for extending the New START treaty, a gesture toward de-escalation, and expressed confidence in a future meeting with Putin. But the contours of that future are being drawn increasingly by someone else's hand. That was Valentin Bogdanov. Here's another one. Oleg Tsarev, former Ukrainian politician. The meeting hasn't been canceled, just postponed, and most likely it will still take place in Budapest. There is no better location. Since Zelensky refused to give up Donbass voluntarily, the summit has been delayed until the Russian army takes it by force. After that, there will be room for negotiations, but on entirely new terms, because Russia will already have it. Malik Dudikov, a political analyst specializing in U.S. affairs. Pressure from hawks on both sides of the Atlantic has worked. Trump postponed the Budapest meeting and refused to send new weapons to Ukraine, a positive sign. The sanctions are more nuanced. They're the first major measures of Trump's second term, but they could later serve as proof that sanctions don't work. Russia will simply reroute its trade flows, and Trump can then push back against the hawks, arguing that he tried sanctions, they failed, and there's no point repeating them. He's playing a multi-layered game, trying to strengthen the U.S. negotiating position, resist internal pressure, and use sanctions as leverage in talks with India and China, Russia's top oil buyers. This is what I think, too. He's unlikely to succeed in coercing either India or China, or in hurting Russia's economy. I agree with that, too. But he might succeed in buying himself some time from the hawks. That's an interesting perspective. Here's another guy. Dmitry Drobnitsky, a political analyst and American affairs expert. Trump has chosen the least strategic path. He believes he can end the war in Ukraine quickly through deal-making and creative diplomacy without addressing the underlying causes. It's not going to work. His vanity has been his undoing. The Euro-Atlantic elite figured him out and learned how to manipulate him, flattering him through the media while threatening his legitimacy through Congress. He should have purged his administration early on. Instead, he avoided conflict, even alienated Elon Musk, who could have helped him clean house. Now, anyone who might have backed his foreign policy agenda is being sidelined, leaving him dependent on the media, Europe, and a Congress where MAGA Republicans are outnumbered. After his call with Putin, Europe rushed to Washington to steer Trump back into the Euro-Atlantic fold, Mark Rutte. It's now clear there is no independent Trump foreign policy, not without a broader change in the U.S. establishment. His line about hoping the sanctions won't be needed for long shows that he didn't really want them. There may still be another meeting with Putin, another phone call, maybe limited contacts, but Trump is no longer an independent player. All that can be said in his favor is that he tried to resist and gave Russia nearly 9 months free of new sanctions and direct funding for the Ukrainian army. That was Dmitry Drobnitsky, a political analyst. And those are the opinions of what has happened, or what they think is going to happen because of these sanctions. And I think most of them are dead on. And I think, and I've said it before, Trump is listening to the wrong folks, whether it's pressure or whether he has to, whether it's EU and all of this. He's trying to stop them from stealing Russian money. Brussels is even pushing back. I don't know if you're aware of that story, but the EU is trying to steal Russia's money and give it to Ukraine. What's the scheme? The EU is proposing to borrow Russia's money, some 160 billion, from Euroclear, who's holding it, a private company in Belgium, with all member states promising to pay it back when, as they put it, Ukraine wins the war and Russia agrees to pay reparations. That's the scheme. Did you hear that? When Ukraine wins the war and Russia agrees to pay reparations, that's when they agree to pay it back. So that's not really borrowing it, is it? So the second question, isn't that wishful thinking? The reparations loan idea assumes both that Ukraine will win the war and that Russia will agree to pay reparations. Neither of those is likely or even possible. It's nonsense. How would it work then? The EU would then forgive the debt to Kiev, but would still have to repay the money it borrowed from Euroclear. So who ultimately would have to pay it back? Probably European taxpayers, not a politically popular or sustainable idea in a bloc where the far right is surging electorally and Brussels forces through an agenda on militarization. So what about the bankers? European central bankers fear a legal precedent that could undermine global financial stability. I think it's idiotic if they do it, as well as destroying the euro's reputation as a safe space. You want to see people abandon the euro and probably the dollar too? Steal Russia's money and watch how fast all the banks pull them out and go to China. Pull them out and go to Saudi Arabia, UAE, somewhere in BRICS. There was an article I read that said Hungary wanted to go to BRICS. I don't believe it. I think it was, definitely propaganda, but there it was. And, anyway, let's go on with this because there's still a few more to go. Okay, so the EU wants to take and use Russian money held privately in Belgium. Who has said what? Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever, whose country hosts Euroclear, has warned that, quote, there's no free money. There are always consequences. I want their signatures saying, if we take Russian President Vladimir Putin's money, we're all going to be responsible if it goes wrong. This was Luxembourg Prime Minister Luc Frieden voiced a similar apprehension. De Wever has refused to move unless he gets 100% backing from EU members. Belgium will not support the EU's plan to use frozen Russian assets as collateral for a massive loan to Ukraine unless the financial risks are shared across all member states. The ECB's Christian Lagarde has warned that breaking the law, which is what this is, to steal Russia's money will crash the euro's reputation as a stable currency. I say the same. A legally contentious move will undermine the euro's credibility, deter investment in euro-denominated assets, and pose a risk to global financial stability. From my vantage point, and with in mind financial stability and the strength of the euro, we will be looking very attentively to make sure that what is proposed is in accordance with international law and is mindful of financial stability, Lagarde said. Days before the EU summit, Italy's Giorgia Meloni warned the bloc's leaders to respect international law. France wants the money to be spent on European weapons and financing the Ukraine state. Germany wants to be money to be spent on weapons only. Other EU members think Kiev should decide how to spend the money. Does Kiev even have a say? Kiev insists that there be no restrictions on how they spend the money, a stance widely regarded with skepticism, you think, given the risk of the cash being siphoned off into Ukraine's notorious graft channels, which are abundant. What does Russia think, and what is it warned of? Russia is thought to hold some $200 billion in EU funds, most of which is privately owned. Wonder what they're going to do. Let us read further. Russian President Putin said last month that smarter governments oppose the seizure of Russian assets because they understand that it would fundamentally undermine all principles of international economic activity and without a doubt cause enormous harm to the international financial system. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov warned of a boomerang if Russian assets are tapped to finance Kiev, telling reporters this month that these plans are all about the illegal seizure of Russian property. We are talking about theft, said Peskov on Wednesday. If someone wants to steal our property, our assets, and illegally appropriate them, they will be subject to legal prosecution in one way or another. These are all steps toward the complete destruction of trust in the principle of property inviolability. The boomerang will hit countries which host the main depositories and are interested in investment attractiveness, he warned. Peskov has likened the EU to a group of mobsters planning their next heist. They all look like a gang. Someone keeps lookout, somebody robs, and somebody, like Belgium, shouts, "Guys, let's share responsibility." So what's the bottom line? If the EU engages in what Russia sees as theft, we will see a Euro slump while Kiev prepares for a much longer war. Curious, curious, curious. We are a bunch of crooks. It's nonsense that we're even talking about it. It is nuts. There's another article that says that they've delayed it. Belgium's demanding robust legal guarantees. They want, according to Bloomberg and Politico, EU officials made very little headway at the Brussels summit on Thursday in the plan to steal this money to create a repatriation loan. Moscow repeats again that this is theft. Politico reported the talks were thrown into disarray after that Bart de Wever took what one official described as a surprisingly uncompromising position. Well, he's a smart man. Belgium, which has legal control over the bulk of the funds through the Brussels-based Euroclear, consistently demands that all your EU members share responsibility if they take Russia's money. So Belgium did back a compromise text that delayed any firm commitment. The current draft, seen by Politico, invites the EU Commission to present, as soon as possible, options for financial support, replacing earlier language that called for a legal proposal. Belgium's opposition left some EU officials unhappy. Yeah, we want to steal the money and you're not letting us. With one source telling Politico, nobody wants to be seen to be responsible for Ukraine running out of money. I don't give a crap if they run out of money. I think if they run out of money, the war's over. But there's nothing agreed yet to actually send them any money. According to Bloomberg, EU leaders plan to review the possibilities at the next summit, with the goal being to get a final agreement by the end of the year on how to steal Russia's money. Dmitry Peskov once again warned that using these assets it's just illegal, and we're going to submit them, or try to submit them to legal prosecution in one way or another. I suppose the bigger picture for me is it doesn't change anything. All the money in the world isn't going to change the result here. You don't have anybody to fight. You can't mobilize people. That you just can't do it. You have no soldiers. Pokrovsk is gone. Life sucks for you. You need to figure out how to end this. My name is Samuel Trapp. This is International Flavor. Listen to me every night, Sunday through Thursday, from 9 p.m. to 10:30. Sometimes I go longer on Sundays. All of my shows are recorded and put out at internationalflavor.com for your listening pleasure at any time. And I very much appreciate you being here this evening and hope you have a very good night.
Damn Radio